And the craftsmanship part to it. As far as gardening goes, I heard a story about Fujitsu. I think it was Fujitsu was growing medical grade lettuce. It was literally lettuce that they were growing for people in hospitals that needed very specific nutritional demands, and so they would hydroponically grow lettuce that were spiked with potassium or whatever the doctor said they needed, and they'd just make a salad with this very expensive lettuce. And so I guess like in terms of craftsmanship, there's a chance that by using modern technology gardening, you could come up with better results. There's a chance than you could in the ground. Now that's not taking anything away from permaculture or the people that have really been doing this 30 years or more, but it is to say that we understand a lot more about how plants grow. You're focused very much on water sustainability, and it feels like those are technologies that are rooted in water sustainability. We're going to try to grow way more efficiently in a tighter space with very small amounts of resources. Yeah. You could sell those, is what I'm really saying. You could say, we sell the hardware for the tank, for the reservoirs, we sell already produced designs for hydroponic, aquaponics in various dimensions. We have universal connectors between components, so there's this catalog of things, and Raincoin has essentially a member reward program that is a coin. And if you buy these and use these, we're tracking it all. It's all rolling up into our profile system where everybody's getting ranked. And you know, like whenever I was building my own computers and talking to people on forums about hardware that goes together, a lot of people in their signature, they would put the spec for their computer at home. So they'd say, I got this motherboard, this video card. There's no reason that like people that are really into Raincoin equipment wouldn't be saying, I've got this tank, this much, you know, this many beds running, you know, da-da-da-da-da. The spec for their crazy garden, it's all Raincoined up.
Yeah, I've heard Jeff Lawton, who's the famous permaculture instructor, and he believes that we need at least 15% of the population growing food. I mean, which is debatable if, you know, we go more of the mechanized route, but I think we need to have that number of people involved in the process. And I was talking with Joe about this earlier, but it's almost like I see a lot of the ag tech tools out there is just creating more distance between people and the food. And you know, what I've learned is that's a bedrock of our, you know, families and community structures. I guess what I'd be interested to see is, you know, as rain is kind of the lifeblood of Earth, you know, that exchange, that transpiration. Does Raincoin then provide the platform for a universe of coins that are all kind of, you know, plant coin or weed coin or whatever coin that all stems from the water? And if there was a way to say, oh, you know, you're interested in developing a local economy of your own for whatever random thing that you're into. Maybe you develop some type of fiber coin. I don't know. It's just, or vitamin A coin. I don't know.
No, I mean, technologically, everything that you want to do is possible. I think all that stuff is already existent, so you just need to rematch it up. The question I think that we're trying to tackle here now is, how are we going to get humans to activate within the system that we're designing? And I mean, what you guys are proposing is not, you're proposing a transference from one system of water distribution now to a new system.
Decentralized water, yes.
Yeah, which entails transitioning from one political economy to another. And when you do that, you want people to go into that system and stay in that system. You want that to be the new thing. You want to stay there. But you have to do it in such a way that encapsulates the values of people from, like I said, local and global. And there is a localization of economies that does occur. But once again, your system overall has to be sensitive to that transition and that transference of commodity to token. Because once you make that shift, there's rarely ever going back. without completely disrupting a system and causing a divergence later on. And whenever you have that divergence later on, it's equal to a hard fork in any other system blockchain ways, which can be extremely detrimental to your overall goal of having Raincoin accepted as a baseline for, produce, other,
goods and services,
goods and services, because you want to, water is one of those common things that everybody uses in the world, and you want to make sure that everybody in the world has a say in how that value is defined if they're in that network. So no, it's a huge leap, but it's one that if it's successful, could easily be the start of many other great things to come.
And it's really early right now, so it's hard to say how it's all going to pan out. Go ahead, Chris.
You said that on your opening slide that you can't have infinite growth on a finite plane. I keep bringing that up, but I think it's salient. So the finite planet part kind of means that you should have a finite money supply. If you're going to be true to that statement, and it could be measured in drops, how many individual drops of water on the entire Earth are. You can figure that number out, and you just say that's the total supply. And that's the most there'll ever be, but if you collect the water, you'll get some of that. As soon as you let it out into your garden, it's gone. It goes back into the big pool in the sky. But maybe that's part of the thing you have to sell people on is we're acknowledging it's finite. Our money is representing how finite it is. And then you just figure out how does it circulate as an afterthought.
Yeah, well, so just trying to operate Raincube at this point as a business, one of the costs that incur every month are data costs, right? So I guess the question is, is Raincube covering the costs of the service? Is it a decentralized? So one of the things that I like about the whole decentralized blockchain approach is if everybody is running a node on their computer and storing information locally and confirming that information with other nodes on the network, does Raincube incur that cost? Or is it, sunk in with the energy consumption from the solar panel?
I personally think everybody that's producing data on the network should own that data. And then if you want to purchase that data or someone externally wants to purchase that data, then in fact I think when we're talking about internalizing stuff into the system, I think data should be that transference, not the Raincoin. Because ultimately the people producing and using that system can collectively come together and sell their data as an asset. Modify that much easier than say something like water.
Right, so how do you accurately value that? If everything costs zero, then how do we keep a balanced supply? So the underlying background behind Raincoin is that it represents the physical rainwater. If it's if it's a glass of water, or if it's a bunch of bananas, or if it's a jar of pickles, like there is a water requirement. So that water requirement would be accurately reflected by how much Raincoin it costs. So for example, almonds are water intensive. So almonds would be very expensive on the Raincoin chart, whereas some lettuce grown in a hydroponic factory would be next to nothing. So let's say you have a big roof and a big yard, you're making a lot of Raincoin. But what happens if you don't own a home? Could you go and work for a day in somebody's garden as a harvester, earn some Raincoin, and then use that to meet your daily food requirement or water requirement?
Right. Yeah, and time banks were one of the original use cases for complementary currencies, and I think that fits extremely well. There's already community gardens are essentially already backed by volunteer labor anyway, so it makes sense that the volunteers have this asset that they can redeem for surplus at a later date. But is that also a problem? Is that a problem?
I think you're like I said, these are all great ideas, but you're really overstretching the core concept of Raincoin and Raincube.
Okay.
Like I said, you need to keep it simple. Bitcoin is extremely valuable and has persisted the longest out of most cryptocurrencies because it's simple. It's just a coin. That's it. So for Raincube to stay sustainable in terms of Raincoin, just keep Raincoin in terms of single focus, water sustainability. Because right here, inside you're quantifying sustainability inside this paper, you have 5 main variables that you initially point out: sustainability, efficiency, resilience, diversity, and interconnectivity. And I assume inter is also incorporating intra connectivity as well, because there's micro and macro scalar connections within the actual Raincube network.
You mean like on the community level and on the global level?
Yeah, because each scale of economy has different considerations in terms of connectivity. You know, the local community is far different than going to the global IOR. You know, but each one has to stay connected and relational to each other in order to maintain the core concept of water sustainability. So, just by focusing on that, like I said, I mean, I think the initial challenge is kind of deciding what you want the Raincube to encapsulate in terms of a token value, and what you want to have as a sidechain functionality on the sides of, you know, proof of flow.
Right.
You know, because produce is one of those, you know, other economic functionalities and exchanges. Those can be built around it, but if you want to keep Raincoin focused on water sustainability issues, then you need to build a token to do just that.
One idea that we've kicked around is this idea of an investment pool, where let's say you purchase the Raincube kit for $1,000, and then that now gives you 1,000 liters worth of flow capacity. Let's say for a year there is 100 people playing. Everybody had the same $1,000 buy-in. Well, let's just say 1,000 people, so we have like an even $1 million. So let's say that there was a 25% profit margin. So we have $250,000 that then can be redistributed to the individuals who produce the most flow. Now that, I don't think, that could be a nice model to expand the physical infrastructure of Raincube, because if you're paying $1,000, but if you use it wisely, you can get $2,000 back at the end of the year when it comes time to harvest. So there are, unfortunately, we're at a point now where we have a working prototype, but we've gotten it so that the Internet of Things prototype is working. Now we're waiting to scale that to the community level, because once we have 2 people in a neighborhood who are on Raincube, and each neighbor can see, oh, well, you have that much water, I have this much water. You're growing, you know, you have a peach tree and I have an apple tree. I've watered my apple tree twice as much as you watered your peach tree. Could we exchange? I trade you, you know, 1 apple for 2 peaches. But then again, you're saying bringing produce is going to complicate it even further, to a point where.
Well, it's a different economy. I mean, water is one economic system. You know, produce uses the water, but it also has other variables that go into actually producing a functioning economy for produce, as opposed to the utility that's just.
Isn't there subsidies for rainwater storage capacity in was it Arizona, the example?
Yeah, no, there's cities in the US and around the world that will subsidize, but these are not internet connected devices. They're just dumb storage systems, which, you know, why we could just stop at IoT, you know, internet connectedness, but at the end of the day, you're still going to have, I mean, right now we're running our IoT prototypes using Amazon Web Services, and that makes sense to continue with that. The idea being, once Ethereum gets more stabilized, it may become more cost effective to be running a decentralized application as opposed to a centralized application. Chris, how far away do you think we are from Ethereum being able to challenge AWS in terms of offering a better service?
It's already available. You can use Microsoft's Azure as a cloud service, and they offer blockchains as a service, and they're using Ethereum behind the scenes. They're also on the committee for enterprise Ethereum, and that just makes sense. They've chosen Ethereum as their blockchain, so you could be building it today.
But are you talking about building your own decentralized compute?
So yeah, so because every Raincube comes with a computer, and right now it's just, you know, a simple microcontroller with a SIM card on it. Does the Raincube computer eventually come with a system on a chip that, you know, is hosting all of the open ledger, you know, blockchains on it?
I'm a fan of hybrid structures where you have a blockchain that has all of your really high value information, and then you have feeder systems that, like IoT is a perfect situation where you're getting way more data than you really need. At some point, some of that data has very little value, maybe even no value. You're getting a water level sensor reading, 10 times a second or something like that because of the speed of these things. You don't need all that. So you could say that there is some connector between this device and the very edge of the blockchain network, and there's some decision made about how much information actually makes it to the blockchain and gets stored there. So, and all this other information is just disposable, but useful in some senses, but not needed for the blockchain. So I would entertain something like that in almost every IoT case where you've got lots more information than you need.
Right, and then we're, weather data as well, which is, a huge commodity.
Yeah.
You put a humidity barometer sensor onto a Raincube, you have a mini weather station.
Right.
So, 21 Co is already, putting out software where you can be selling, weather data for Bitcoin using micropayments. So, how does Raincube and Raincoin become more developer friendly? So, like Patrick was talking about, even having a slip and slide, which, isn't contributing to the food economy per se, but it also has a value for community relations and, time spent with family, which is hard to quantify.
Right.
And what's funny about the Sacred Economics book is the author, Charles Eisenstein, basically says, anytime you try to quantify something, it automatically detriments the quality. So it's almost like, well, with Raincoin, if we start to quantify the rainwater, are we somehow decreasing the quality? But I have a feeling that because we're quantifying it, the quality could increase. If you have a better relationship with your water, does that mean because right now I think the problem with solving the water crisis is that it can only be done at the top level. You're looking at water management districts, Army Corps of Engineers. These are the only people who have the ability to solve the problem. I think with Raincube and Raincoin, it offers an alternative solution where any individual can make an exponential impact by converting their roof and their lawn to rainwater harvesting and gardening. I guess the question is, do you even try to quantify those social relationships? How has Farmville done it? I think it could be a system where you have badges, or you have bonus points for hooking up a gray water system to your shower, so you get double Raincoin. But I think that's kind of the fun part about this project, is it offers so many possibilities in how to convert rainwater into something useful.
I think that's more in line with what people can understand in terms of a business and what your story is and things like that. You're about enabling people to make smarter water choices or more sustainable choices. And I almost feel like Raincoin is just an incentive program. As much as it is a big deal for anybody to say that we're launching a coin that's going to have its own economy, I wonder if your bigger story is that you're using it as a game piece to encourage people to live more sustainably. And here's all the tools that you could use to live more sustainably.
Right, because the question is, okay, well, great, you just made a computer for rainwater systems. What's to say that Rainbird or Orbitz or whatever the other big, industrial Netafim, whoever comes in and says, oh, well, we'll make our own version. Well, are you running Raincoin, or are you running, the social network, so to speak? Because I think at the end of the day, the reason why people will want to choose the Raincube platform is because that's where people already are. So one thing that kind of bothers me still is that people could cheat. Like in any money system, right,
there's a chance that people are going to try and cheat. And so in this situation, you can kind of curb it. You know the weather in their area. You know it rained and how much it rained. And so they've got some room they can play with. They can still go stick their hose in it and fill it up to the max so they get the most amount of rain coins, you know, while it's raining outside, just to make sure, you know?
Yeah.
So they could always do that, and you'll lose a little bit because of that cheating. But maybe the best defense against cheating isn't to like really try and nail, did you really use it or did you not? It's just to accept that this whole idea is very altruistic. Anybody that's going to be thinking sustainably is because they care about other people, and they're already altruistically minded. So I wouldn't put too much, I wouldn't make it like you can use this coin to eat. So if you're desperate and you need to eat, rain coin's your ticket, because that's very, you know, hyperbolic, but I'm just saying people will cheat the more value this has that's not an altruistic value, the more like hard dollars and cents value it has. So you're always going to like walk that line, accept a certain amount of cheating, but try and make it to where people wear it as a badge, like you said. They don't keep it in their wallet.
And wouldn't it be possible to, like you said, tiers of badges based on certain proofs within proof of flow or proof of produce? Like if you can publish that you've certified your water quality through some external tool also, that isn't there added value in that also? And can Raincube do that or possibly do that? You know what I mean? Or if you're growing organic produce, and so we know that this node in the IOR network is certified, non-GMO, everything is all good, so there's more value to that, you know?
Well, I think the more horizontal you keep any kind of system like this, the better off it is, because the more vertical it becomes, the more hierarchical it becomes, the more you incentivize cheating, accumulation, competitions like that.
Yeah,
So
the more competitive it is, the more likely you are to cheat.
yes, yeah, absolutely, because the commodity becomes worth more the higher up, the more accumulation occurs within a system, which is why I asked the intra versus intra stuff, because you know you want the Internet of Rain to be a global ecosystem of nodes that are connected to each other that negotiate, help understand the water economics from local to global, using the system itself to do that. And you don't want people in there too much. You want people to participate in the system, but you don't want them to be able to guide the system, which is why you have the consensus mechanism in the first place.
Right. So maybe rainwater as, just to go back to like you said, solely just the rainwater being the value. Is it possible that, you know, larger organizations buy emergency storage space, or rent emergency storage space, or rent the data taken from the IOR network at the standard rate, and that's the value?
Well, once again, I don't think you should commodify the water. I think you should commodify the act of storing the water as an act of sustainability. Once again, those are two different tokenization systems. You know, Nestle Corp and Flint, Michigan, those examples, those are the results of commodifying water. You want to present the opposite argument, which is we're incentivizing sustainability through the accumulation of water that we then redistribute.
Right, and that's kind of what I meant, and in that, like, let's say I have this storage capacity of 1,000 gallons or 3,000 gallons, and I personally only use 1,000 gallons. So I have this extra 2,000 that I can essentially rent in an emergency situation. So I'm still going to collect it in case of drought.
Yeah.
And in the event of a drought, it's there.
You'd have to figure out a platform to where, you know, one, people are getting rated, so that if you're going to have this distributed, like some company needs to store 100,000 gallons of water, and they're just in little pockets of 500 here, 500 there, you know, there's going to have to be some way that they can trust that that capacity is stored in a distributed way, and it's going to be there. And they have a way to transport it all, so move it around. It's not to say that that economy doesn't exist or that problem doesn't exist, but you would have to solve it. You'd have to make it so easy that it's easier than just the one guy that has 1 million gallons of storage space.
I wonder when we get to a point where, okay, let's say we have 10 homes on a block, and everybody knows how much water everybody else has. Is there a point where there's a smart contract that executes once home one gets to a certain threshold? They've just gone to, you know, they've just emptied their tank, but home 6 has an extra tank because they've just been using less. Is there a way to have a smart contract execute so that the home with the surplus is automatically sent to the home with less supply? And would that homeowner say, hey, you're using more and I'm using less? I wonder how we could transition to a point where we have enough, so it doesn't even matter, because I guess like human emotion or human psychology is we automatically revert to scarcity, like where there's not enough, we're going to fight over that resource. So I wonder if there is a way to have this artificial intelligence executing these smart contracts that is somehow balancing that ecosystem out. So it's taking less pressure off the individual to make those decisions, or coming into decision fatigue where, oh, we're not getting rain for the next month. Do I take a shower today? That kind of question. But then again, if you have a well that's backed up, how does that play into the game where you don't get Raincoin if you're using well water? But Florida is one of the few places that has a pretty reliable aquifer, at least for now. But if you go to Texas, they don't have that luxury.
So is some part of this is about, the whole idea is about sustainability, but is some part of this about localization or relocalizing, like trying to be more self-reliant or dependent on the people around you?
I think there's two tiers. One is the physical resources locally, right? Because if you're growing food or you're collecting rainwater, you want to keep that inside of your local watershed or environment. But if you have the software tools, you have the hardware tools, you would want to make that available globally, because a microcontroller here is going to be the same as a microcontroller over there. So I feel like the technology is open, but the exchanges are localized, if that makes sense.
It does. And so sometimes the impulse to localize goes along with like some nostalgia for the way we used to do things. And so the way we used to garden or grow food uses huge amounts of water, and a lot of it evaporates. And so you could use something that's way more technical, like hydroponics or aquaponics or something. It's going to use 7% of the water that a traditional garden is going to use, and it's in a box, so there's chances that it's more portable than a garden. Right.
So that brings up an interesting point, because if you can grow all of the leafy greens supply in a hydroponics factory, and it's using 0.1 Raincoin as opposed to like 1 Raincoin in a traditional garden, but there's certain things that you can't grow hydroponically. Like let's say you want to have an orchard or something. It'd be really hard to grow that using hydroponics. So maybe rain is a great fit for hydroponics. And what if we're able to grow enough food indoors to meet base nutritional needs? Like we're able to get like enough vitamins to everybody through whatever soylent comes out. But what if you want something exotic? What if you want to have that rare fruit? Would you pay a premium for that using Raincoin? So that's another idea that I've thought about, because I think we're going to get to a point where, sure, anybody, like, here's a salad, right? But the way human culture has evolved is we're always looking for something unique, something new. And what if we get to a point where backyard gardeners, the reason why you're buying from them is not because it's a commodity, but in fact, you can only get that like specific variety of sweet potato from that person. And I think that's kind of what I think is going to be the future of farming, is hyperlocal, like just all different kinds of strains of different fruits and vegetables, as opposed to what we have right now, which is you get one type of carrot, one type of broccoli, one type of lettuce inside of Publix. So
I think that's the actual trend in localization, is it's craftsmanship and diversity and uniqueness, as opposed to simply just encasing things in a regional area. And there's value in that, and that goes into quantifying sustainability, where it's this balance between diversity and interconnectivity. It's how, like he's saying, we can baseline cover all the needs in this very efficient mechanism, but at the end of the day, we crave diversity. And so, is it designable?
And the craftsmanship part to it. As far as gardening goes, I heard a story about Fujitsu. I think it's Fujitsu was growing medical grade lettuce. It was literally lettuce that they were growing for people in hospitals that needed very specific nutritional demands, and so they would hydroponically grow lettuce that were spiked with potassium or whatever the doctor said they needed, and they'd just make a salad with this very expensive lettuce. And so I guess like in terms of craftsmanship, there's a chance that by using modern technology gardening, you could come up with better results. There's a chance than you could in the ground. Now that's not taking anything away from permaculture or the people that have really been doing this 30 years or more, but it is to say that we understand a lot more about how plants grow. You're focused very much on water sustainability, and it feels like those are technologies that are rooted in water sustainability. We're going to try to grow way more efficiently in a tighter space with very small amounts of resources.
Yeah.
You could sell those, is what I'm really saying. You could say, we sell the hardware for the tank, for the reservoirs, we sell already produced designs for hydroponic, aquaponics in various dimensions. We have universal connectors between components, so there's this catalog of things, and Raincoin has essentially a member reward program that is a coin. And if you buy these and use these, we're tracking it all. It's all rolling up into our profile system where everybody's getting ranked. And like whenever I was building my own computers and talking to people on forums about hardware that goes together, a lot of people in their signature, they would put the spec for their computer at home. So they'd say, I got this motherboard, this video card. There's no reason that like people that are really into Raincoin equipment wouldn't be saying, I've got this tank, this much, this many beds running, da-da-da-da-da. The spec for their crazy garden, it's all Raincoined up.
Yeah, I've heard Jeff Lawton, who's the famous permaculture instructor, and he believes that we need at least 15% of the population growing food. I mean, which is debatable if we go more of the mechanized route, but I think we need to have that number of people involved in the process. And I was talking with Joe about this earlier, but it's almost like I see a lot of the ag tech tools out there is just creating more distance between people and the food. And what I've learned is that's a bedrock of our families and community structures. I guess what I'd be interested to see is as rain is kind of the lifeblood of Earth, that exchange, that transpiration. Does Raincoin then provide the platform for a universe of coins that are all kind of plant coin or weed coin or whatever coin that all stems from the water? And if there was a way to say, oh, you're interested in developing a local economy of your own for whatever random thing that you're into. Maybe you develop some type of fiber coin. I don't know. It's just, or vitamin A coin. I don't know.
No, I mean, technologically, everything that you want to do is possible. I think all that stuff is already existent, so you just need to rematch it up. The question I think that we're trying to tackle here now is how are we going to get humans to act the way within the system that we're designing? And I mean, what you guys are proposing is not, you're proposing a transference from one system of water distribution now to a new system.
Decentralized water, yes.
Yeah, which entails transitioning from one political economy to another. And when you do that, you want people to go into that system and stay in that system. You want that to be the new thing. You want to stay there. But you have to do it in such a way that encapsulates the values of people from, like I said, locally global. And there is a localization of economies that does occur. But once again, your system overall has to be sensitive to that transition and that transference of commodity to token. because once you make that shift, there's rarely ever going back without completely disrupting a system and causing a divergence later on. And whenever you have that divergence later on, I mean, it's equal to a hard fork in any other system blockchain, which can be extremely detrimental to your overall goal of having Raincoin accepted as a baseline for, produce, other,
goods and services,
goods and services, because I mean, water is one of those common things that everybody uses in the world, and you want to make sure that everybody in the world has a say in how that value is defined if they're in that network. So no, it's a huge leap, but it's one that if it's successful, can easily be the start of many other great things to come.
And it's really early right now, so it's hard to say how it's all going to pan out. Go ahead,
You
Chris.
said that on your opening slide that you can't have infinite growth on a finite plane.
Yes.
I keep bringing that up, but I think it's salient. So the finite planet part kind of means that you should have a finite money supply. If you're going to be true to that statement, and it could be measured in drops, how many individual drops of water on the entire Earth are there? You can figure that number out, and you just say that's the total supply. And that's the most there'll ever be, but if you collect the water, you'll get some of that. As soon as you let it out into your garden, it's gone. It goes back into the big pool in the sky. But maybe that's part of the thing you have to sell people on is we're acknowledging it's finite. Our money is representing how finite it is. And then you just figure out how does it circulate as an afterthought.
Yeah, well, so just trying to operate Raincube at this point as a business, one of the costs that incur every month are data costs, right? So I guess the question is, is Raincube covering the costs of the service? Is it a decentralized? So one of the things that I like about the whole decentralized blockchain approach is if everybody is running a node on their computer and storing information locally and confirming that information with other nodes on the network, does Raincube incur that cost? Or is it, sunk in with the energy consumption from the solar panel?
I personally think everybody that's producing data on the network should own that data. And then if you want to purchase that data or someone externally wants to purchase that data, then in fact I think when we're talking about internalizing stuff into the system, I think data should be that transference, not the Raincoin. Because ultimately people producing and using that system can collectively come together and sell their data as an asset, commodify that much easier than say something like water.